discount to start with Leon Wieseltier of the New Republic, who in May inspired and organized a meeting in Kiev of a group of leading intellectuals to discuss this question of what threats Ukraine faces, what its implications are. And you wrote in your opening remarks in that meeting of Ukraine's desire and struggle to affiliate with the West. So I'd like to ask you, how should the West respond to Ukraine's preference?
Not the way it has been responding. I think that one of the terrible ironies for our Ukrainian friends is that they are risking everything to join a Europe that is not yet prepared to lift a finger for them. I think that the response of the West, and there's the European West and the American West, and obviously they're related, but they're not the same, has been slow and small and grudging in three areas, one of which I know least about, which is the economic area, then in the military arena, but mainly also in the moral and philosophical arena. I think that Ukraine is obviously in desperate economic straits, and the West's indifference to any immediate effective economic relief seems quite clear. Militarily, the argument has been set up that any military assistance to the Ukraine puts us on the slippery slope, and we're not going to go to war with Putin, so we shouldn't give them anything. I mean, this has been a characteristic rhetorical dodge of the Obama administration when it comes to action in a variety of regions in the world. That if, it's what Billie Holiday used to call all or nothing at all. And since we're not for all, we must be for nothing at all. When it's quite clear that all that the Ukrainians are asking for is the weaponry necessary to fight their own fight. But the part that most enrages me is not, the policy part, obviously, but there is a moral, philosophical, rhetorical abdication that's going on here. It happens at the level of rhetoric when Putin invades Ukraine and we refuse to call it an invasion, for example. It's an incursion. Sometimes it's not even an incursion. Or if he sends troops without insignias into Crimea, it's a hybrid war, when in fact there's nothing hybrid about the status of Crimea right now. We know exactly to whom it belongs. And the most surprising development for me in recent years has not been the horrors of the Middle East, because the Middle East is behaving like the Middle East, only more so. And not even the repression in Xi's China, because again, China's behaving like China, but only more so. The most surprising and shocking development has been the rise of Putin as his transformation from a KGB thug into the father of great Russian nationalism and into a military aggressor across his borders. This seems to me to be a fact of enormous moral and strategic importance. And I do not see any of the Western leaders responding adequately to that fact. For a long time, Merkel didn't have the talk and didn't have the walk. Now she seems to have the talk, but not yet the walk. Obama's problems in this area are well known. I think that the West is now, the only options we seem to be willing to consider are inaction or inconsequential action. But consequential action seems to be something that we're not comfortable with for a whole variety of reasons that, by the way, have more to do with domestic, political, and ideological factors here, and with the war in Iraq, as Madeline said, which determines nobody, if you order spaghetti in Washington today, you have to be sure that George Bush never ordered that spaghetti, because if he did, you might, etc., etc. So I think that for all these reasons, the West has been disgraceful. The Ukrainians, when I visited, I'd never been to Kiev before, our wonderful event in May. And one of the things I noticed about Kiev as soon as I got there is it's not accurate to say that they aspire to join Europe. Kiev is already a European place in every significant way. I mean, when you walk its streets and you talk to its people, you recognize these people as fellow small d Democrats, as fellow liberals, as fellow multiculturalists, as fellow pluralists, all of it is entirely familiar. And they are already, as it were, one of us, except we have not yet had the decency to treat them as one of us, with all the corollary obligations that that would impose on us.